Hi, everybody. Hope everyone is having a decent festive season. And tonight, I was just going to meditate, but kind of changed my mind. Norma McNaughton has an interesting question. I don't know if it makes any sense to anybody.
Do you have the sound on?
Yeah, is it not? We're making adjustments to sound. We make sure that our sound is up. The line is moving. Everything is working.
Maybe it's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just me.
Okay. So, here's the question. I think it's something that is on, as we get older, on everyone's mind. Norma says, given this time in my life, I'm surrounded by people dying. Hoping to address this topic, as some are ready, some are fearful, some folks think it is morbid to discuss. Is there a genuine, gentle manner to approach these issues, or is silence and listening the only solution? I have no idea. I think it's very difficult to discuss this particular question. It usually ends up being no one wants to really be in pain as they are passing from these planes into other planes, but we're leaving these planes that are really basic planes that engage primarily in sensing. I remember an old friend, David was his first name. Unfortunately, I can't remember his last name. Really interesting fellow, very bright, very capable. And he was passing, he had cancer. And we used to get together once a week, and when I went to India this one particular time, he said, I may not be here when you get back. I said, well, if you're not, it's been a pleasure. And he said, oh no, it's been a pleasure. So back and forth. Anyway, because we knew, these kinds of things happen to us all. No one gets out of here without having these particular versions of what the heck is coming next. And lo and behold, when I did get back about a month later, he was still alive, and he wanted to come in and say hello for the last time. So anyway, it was interesting. I got a phone call from his wife, and she said, would you mind coming here? I said, absolutely not. So off I went. And she said, because he was not able to function very well. He was lying on a Chesterfield. But he told me that he would come back to say goodbye to them. He had a couple of children, and myself. Asked if I would come, so I did. Anyway, I got there. And he said, it's really interesting. Everything is fine. But he's engaging with others who were there. The implication were people who were looking after him as he passed. But he said he wanted to come back just to say goodbye. And it's been a pleasure. We enjoyed our conversations. And that's what we did.
So he died?
And then he died.
Came back.
Yeah. He came back and he said, they're telling me, in other words, he was able to communicate on a different level than here on these planes. And they're saying basically that he had to go now because it was time. And then he closed his eyes and he died. But his relationship with passing was constructive, very positive. He was on meds, of course, for the pain that he had, but he was really interactive with another state. I've had a little bit of experience with this early on in my early years, back in the 70s, I guess you could say. I was involved with the Spiritualist Church for a while, and Reverend Stoddard, at that time, was here in Ottawa, but he had quite a large congregation in Toronto, and he was able to interact with other forms. He had that kind of clairvoyance. I went to Toronto. Honestly, in those days, clairvoyance was a little different. And so I went to Toronto. He asked me to go, and I did. And he asked me to become a minister. And of course, for some reason, it didn't seem like as if that was what I should do. So I said to him, you go meditate and find out whether I should actually do that, because it doesn't come back in a very, what I would say, conclusive manner when I'm engaging with those levels. He said, I will do that, but you have to take the church. And I said, well, okay, I don't mind. We'll see what happens. So, because I hadn't had too much experience in that department. So when I got up there, of course, what occurred was the energy boosted me up, so I was able to begin to perceive balconies where there were no balconies. So it happens in the mind, but it was as if you were seeing it, because you could see them. And then, of course, I talked to a person would be there who'd passed and would point at a person that I should go to, and then they would give me a message. And it was like really not anything very important on my part. I was just like a go-between. I found it interesting that these folks definitely were linked to the person that they were pointing at. And definitely what they told, they knew exactly who it was immediately. So from that perspective, at that level of clairvoyance at the time, it appeared to me as if that was a reality. Then one time, a personal friend of mine was passing, and make a long story short, I think I've told this story once or twice before, because it's important to know that there might be not always negative versions of what happens after you pass, because it's really, there are a lot of belief systems around this stuff. But in this particular case, I know I was sitting and I was doing some prayers, and of course he was engaging. We were trying to engage. He couldn't speak by that time, as in the final moments of his life. And so I was allowed to watch energy move up, down and through his body, and then upward and out of his head. And he came out of his head, right through the top, small little image. That's what would make sense to me, right? So using the images of him and I, we're both human beings. And I watched two beings coming towards the top of his head prior to that, a few seconds before, and they stood over his head, and he appeared right in the middle of the two. And he, of course, tried to get back into his body, tried to squeeze my hand. I could barely even feel something that was with his mind, of course. And I said, okay, it's okay. I can see them. It's okay. And his voice went, huh? Like this, which surprised me because I didn't think he could do that when he was out of his body. Lots of things that are against rules and regulations that we already set up, of course. And then all three of them turned and walked into the distance. One could say that these were images that would support my feeling comforted by seeing that he was okay in moving into the distance. A number of months later, we had a thing that we used to talk about when I first met this gentleman. And that was that we had been in a future life together. You're not supposed to have those, you see. So rules don't follow perfection. You have a rule. Doesn't necessarily mean it's real. It's just our rules. So I met him in let's say, a spacecraft of which I had fallen and hit my knee. And one morning I went for breakfast in a restaurant, and this guy looks at me and he's talking to himself, and he says, I know that guy. I don't know who he is, but I can't remember his name. Never met each other before. He left, never did contact. Next time we went in, I met him, then he walked over and he said, look, I know you from somewhere, I don't know where. And I said, go get your coffee and come down, and I'll tell you where we met. So I told him where we met in one of my meditations. Well, he started to laugh because he was an engineer in that particular format. And, of course, we chatted about it, and we both laughed, and it was kind of funny. He says, that's pretty weird because I'm pretty darn sure I've met you before. But I said, we've never met on this level at all. Inadvertently, when he passed, he came back. I was watching TV, and he was speaking in my head, kind of an energy lift up again. And he said, I just came back to tell you that I don't think I'm going to be in that dream, in that place where we met before. I think I'm moving into, he was involved with beings who were helping him to grow internally, spiritually, and that is where he was going to put his major focus and therefore stay there. And I said, that's wonderful. I wish you well. And he said, and you. And off he went. You see, there's an awful lot that goes on that we do not understand. And there are all kinds of near-death experiences and talking, all kinds of stories that come out of these things. And some are counter to others and all kinds of things. And these often are based on ideas that sit firmly in the minds or the responses or the belief systems of us while we're here. I would say, and I may not be right. Maybe there are levels of engagement. Some believe that you would engage primarily in a way that suits your version of what you believe needs to be there. So you'll be comforted in some way by an engagement with after-death experience. Whatever it is, I would suggest that we truly be as constructive as possible in our ponderings. Because, for one idea, I can't believe that a higher state, God or whatever you might call it, that higher state, would not have tremendous levels of love and compassion, or even beings who are so young that they act out in ways that are really registered as really harsh and determinate versions of engagement with life that make no sense to the average person, even the average person. So be as constructive as you can in relationship to your own engagement with life, because all of us will one day not be on these planes. It's the way it works out. And we manifest, of course, I've given many talks on the purposes of our coming here, often, is to engage with different levels, commensurate with, similar to our upbringings, and then pull slowly out of those the best we can, and sometimes that's extremely difficult. But we fall in love with those versions of how you think you need to be valued by those who have trained you from their version of how they think they need to be. Moving out of that helps others who are in similar circumstances to move out of theirs a little bit. However, that is not a perfect scenario, because we often have great difficulty moving away from how we think we need to be valued. Because there is a great, very strong urge to be valued as our parental background seemed to value them being them. But that's not the only part of it. We also need to be recognized somehow. We're so insecure, to be honest, in a version of somehow being comfortable. And so many diverse definitions of what comfort means to each and every one of us. And it's not so easy for us. There's so many people who say, well, we will develop and we will do this and we will be able and we will be important. And in that belief construct, they truly and totally believe that that may be true. And for them it may be, until they can broaden out and understand that maybe that kind of loving that may come from a continuous state of engagement that affects us and we use it for our own purposes may be seen differently. I know many who, if you don't agree with me, they say, then you can't be very valuable. I don't agree with that, but each one of us grows through us, and chances are any one of us doesn't have a perfect way of doing things. And I am truly hopeful that that is true. But maybe we can touch each other in helping each other somewhere along the line. And even if we don't think that that may be help, somehow something slowly changes within us so that we can begin to be aware of something beyond our belief systems. And I think in the meantime, belief systems are all we've got. And we seem to have a lot of individualized, personalized belief systems. And then responses that come out and say, this is the only right way, this kind of thing. I think that's a little bit too bad, because that means we cut off any idea of being helped by others or being helpful to others. It's really interesting, but this is all part of these planes, and we tend to really somehow like this all over the world. I just don't think that higher state or God state or whatever you might, universal essence, aligns with those kinds of things, but is patient and compassionate enough, maybe, and perhaps loving enough to help us or to allow us to try and figure that out or perceive it from a different perspective other than the one that we already glorify. I wish everybody well with that. I'm not a great believer, as some may be, that we have to do a lot of suffering. I'm not a great stringent believer in that kind of thing. We do anyway, because there's all kinds of things that are different than what tends to comfort us. That in itself is a kind of a hint that our relationship with all of these things may not be as real as what we believe. And also, it's also a hint that we are living on these planes, and these planes are involved with constructs or belief systems that are very important in various parts of the world, and therefore we comply with them. We certainly comply with individualist perspectives, and many of those are just perhaps not as perfect as what we believe they might be. Anyway, Norma, even from what I'm talking about, when you're talking about these things to other people, I think it's difficult to come up with perfect words for anybody. But your idea of listening and understanding and recognizing that there are aspects of life that are difficult for those who are here, left behind, some very loving friends or moments, being kind, respectful of their journey, and be hopeful that others will be kind and respectful of yours. So I really wish you well with that. I've lost a number of friends. I'm getting a little older. Every time you get older, you lose a few. That's for sure. And remember the good moments with those friends. I've never met a perfect person, and I'll guarantee you, from my perspective, perfection is not one of the things that we are really good at. So remember that part, and try to understand that other people don't necessarily believe the same way that you might, or I might, or someone else might. And that's got to be okay somehow, because those beliefs comfort them in their vulnerability. Of course, ours would comfort us in our vulnerability, whatever that may be. So, if you're fine with that, I'll leave that where it is. And I might do one other one here and then we'll meditate. This is a question which normally I don't get too heavily involved with, but this one is from Suzanne Hardy in Carolina. Ron, I have a question about the human connection to the energies in the universe, particularly our relationship to the sun. We are light energy of frequency or several frequencies, and our life giver on earth and this plane for us is the sun. Okay? Some civilizations honor the sun, have honored the sun. Persian background, and many others, by the way. Our modern lives are far from that belief of the sun as a god, for the most part. How does the sun interact with us beyond the physical? Okay. Now, also, she goes on, this becomes an astronomical question, I guess, to some degree, but our universe is created with great powers of energy, and I wonder if the frequencies of the energy clusters, like asteroids and planets, have different frequencies and how they affect us. How do we affect them, as in the whole of the cosmic mix? This is a sounding bit like an astrological question, and is sort of, but the sun and our connection to it for here on earth and our growth of spiritual relationship to it is the primary question. I'll give you an example of something that it's the only thing I can do in this. Otherwise, it's going to be supposition. I came out of in 1970, I think it was 76 in Dallas, Texas. I came out of a conference, and I needed a bit of air. I think in Dallas it was 110 that day. It was quite warm, but I was in air conditioning, and I said, "Whoop! I think I need a break." So I walked out, got outside the building, and there were a number of trees around, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Oh gosh, lovely. And for some strange reason, I think it was a little bit energized in that milieu. It was a kind of esoteric conference. People of all different states and levels of growth. And I noticed I remembered there was a lecture about putting your back to a coniferous tree. Something like this one to the side, but this one isn't real. So it's a real one.
Oh, you just told anyway.
Marlene said I shouldn't have told everybody. But anyway. So anyway, I put my back to this tree, and it didn't seem to do anything to me. But I just happened to turn my back that I could notice. So I turned my back to the sun, and immediately I was just glowing. And I thought, wow, now that's interesting. See, this is not astrology. This is just an emanation of energy. Yeah? Of one energy form affecting another energy form, right? Because you're all energy formed. So in that, I recognized that energy was all through me, because at that time I was engaging with that sort of thing. Thanks to many people there at the conference. And in that particular moment, I was pretty well glowing. Now, I noticed a gentleman that came out as well, and his name was Noel Tile. And he was an astrologer, but he was also a person who could engage energetically with another. And he noticed that I was glowing, and he said, "Wow, interesting glow there." Like a little glowworm, I suppose. I could have said, but I didn't. And I said, "Yeah, it's a lovely day, just beautiful." So I could call that an honest engagement with the sun, energetically, from my perspective. You can try that on your own if you are meditating, for example, and you go out after you meditate. Keep your focus above the head and behind you. Gently engage, turn your back to the sun to see if you can notice any change whatsoever. You may notice a change, slight bump up or increase in energy all the way through you. Don't be nervous if that happens. Don't be nervous if it doesn't happen. But it can happen. And just stay there for a few minutes. You're not trying to get a suntan. You're just being there, engaging with energy that might be coming from the sun. From my point of view, it was energy coming from the sun. Did I know that without any doubt in my mind? Well, I think so, but I could be wrong. It could have been coming from someplace else, because energy is an interactive thing. As to asteroids and planets and constellations as well, by the way, there are many strong beliefs and many kinds of astrology, by the way, not only one kind, so many, that believe that this is one of the things that actually occurs. Their main belief is that way because those forms exist. And whatever energetic engagement can come from those forms emanates towards an individual or individuals here on this planet because we are susceptible to perceiving energy. If you can perceive that, fine. If it's belief, fine. If it comforts you, fine. Doesn't seem to comfort me as much, but I do know the experience of it is related to engaging with something off of us. The problem with it might be that once we become a great astrologer, we become engrossed in our own petard. In other words, we think that we're really important again. When if you can soften that stuff down, you become more sensitive because you're watching energy occur inside of you that may not be you. So you're looking for differences there. One of the things that I do know is that you can engage with other states and perceive beyond what is normal here. That I know to be a true reality. So you start from what you really know, the best you can. I also know that there are belief systems other than believing in astrology. There's astronomy. If you are interested in astrology, you're very fortunate in a way because some of it, in relationship to the star systems, connect with astronomy. Capricorn, Sagittarius, Virgo, all the rest. So be interested in astronomy. Also, be curious. Curiosity is something that could be valuable to you. It stretches the particular belief systems that a person may have, where one thing has to be this way, and that's the only way they can be. Because our tendency in our world is to be a little like that. It closes the door to understanding beyond those things, because it begins to make you feel as if you're important, because you know stuff that is exactly like this, whereas your world, and it's fine, but your world is an experiential world. And what you don't realize is you can almost believe in anything. And if you move out of the importance of you just a bit, you will begin to have experiences. It's a bit strange. It's like as if it's a focus or a concentration on something so that something else can happen. In the old days, they used to meditate on candles. Very effective method of meditation. Meditate on scripture. Very effective method of meditation. But also an effective method of memorization, which doesn't mean too much, except for the building up of an individual's ego about knowing something. And our world is based on that principle. I don't see anything wrong with that until you can't allow anything else into it other than what you believe has to be true. This is a fundamental flaw. Yet it's a fundamental engagement with how we engage with life here on these planes, all across the world, in every department. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't care. It's like a simplistic version of what must be true versus other must be truths. It's very hard for us to lean out of that. But learning can be helpful. It can also be, as some have said, difficult for us because what we do is we tend to, as soon as we learn something, believe that that's the only way it needs to be. An older gentleman one time told me that they went to university and got their PhD in a particular subject in 1931. And I thought, wow. I said to him, has anything changed? He started laughing his head off. He said, I'm still trying to keep up. No matter what happens, I'm trying to keep up, which means most of the stuff that I knew in 1931 to be true, according to what I was taught, was bent and broadened and shifted. So much it was barely recognizable. But I'm still trying to keep up. It's very interesting. This person had a very good sense of humor and a very broad thinking mind. And he taught himself that that was an important thing to have. But he also knew that the broader thinking was a little confusing from time to time. But he also knew that he was trying to make sense of it as honestly as he could as he did this relearning movement all through his life. That is a wonderful thing, I think. And I don't think it's perfect either. But I do think it's valuable in the learning of an individual from the inside out. Because then it's okay to ask questions of things that you know have to be true, even if you don't like the idea of having them not true. Reconstruct that. Let there be ideas and questions and curiosity. He said an interesting thing to me one time. I don't know, Ron, you're not very well educated, and I wasn't at the time. But he said, you're curious. You'll probably get better educated. I said, I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. He said, well, look, no matter how much education you get, or how broad you begin to see things, know that there's always something broader. You're always building baselines, new foundations, things that touch each other, that coexist, but they don't look like they do. They come at things from a different angle. One thing comes at it from this angle, another thing comes at it from another angle, another thing comes at it from a different angle, whatever the it is. And that is a fundamental truth, it seems. Much more fundamental than something that has to be true and nobody else is right. But I think he was a little bit ahead of his time, but I think there are a lot of people who allow that to occur without depressing other people's way of seeing life. There are those around. If you be one of those, you're very fortunate. Because at least tomorrow, whatever your tomorrow is, if something happens that is different, you might not throw it away right away. You might wonder about it and be curious and try to see how it might fit your relationship with your learning scheme. So let's meditate. That is not really off topic there. It's a fine generalization of the universal. I hope that's okay, Susan. Take care of yourself. We're going to meditate, and I wish everyone well. We'll meditate probably around an hour. And once again, I won't say this at the end, but I hope everyone is okay and have a good, solid year of growth. Two things I'll do now.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani
Jagadambe Janani Namastasye 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 Namo Namaha
Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding, and have a good evening. Take your time. Remember your hands. Good night.